It is Sunday, the 30th of April, 2017. I am just starting up my alternative my alternative spiritual practice of protesting against Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuses, and hypocrisy, which includes, but is by no means limited to, a protest against the fact that Unitarian Universalists, specifically the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is the headquarters for Unitarian Universalism in the United States, say nothing of internationally, has falsely accused me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel in legal bullying that's intended to cover up and deny what the Unitarian Universalist Association's Canadian attorney, Stikeman Elliott, Barristers and Solicitors litigation lawyer, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe, describes as such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. So this is just, one of the ways in which Unitarians, also known as Unitarian Universalists, cover up clergy abuse, or try to. In my case, they were completely unsuccessful in intimidating me into removing the Emerson Avenger blog posts that tell the readily verifiable truth about such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, to borrow two choice phrases from the two arrogant and aggressive cease and desist demand letters that Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe sent to me in June of 2012, just under 5 years ago now. I did not remove so much as a comma from the Emerson Avenger blog after being falsely accused of blasphemous libel for blogging about Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell, who was charged, tried, and convicted of committing such despicable crimes, or the despicable crime as known as rape. I wouldn't describe Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell as a pedophile simply because his victims, at their youngest ages when the rapes began, were 16 years old. It's possible they might have been a little bit younger, but they were, in their early to mid-teens when the rapes began. I generally think of pedophiles as, people who are sexually attracted to prepubescent children who are not teenagers, essentially, or at the very young end of the teenager scale, 13 perhaps. So Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell was not guilty of the despicable crime known as pedophilia, as far as I know, but he was a rapist who was convicted and sentenced to a jail term of, I believe, 8 years for his despicable crimes. I say crimes because he was actually convicted of, several different counts and multiple rapes, not just one victim even, as I understand it, at least two victims. The one person who I did describe as a pedophile rapist was Richard Buell of First Parish, Norwell in Massachusetts. That's Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's parish, or former parish, in Norwell, Massachusetts. And he was charged, tried, and convicted of the forcible rape of preteen girls, including a female family member who was most likely a granddaughter or a grandniece or something like that, based on the age differences. According to the news reports about Richard Buell's rape of preteen girls, his victims were no older than 12 years old when the rapes took place, and by some estimates might have been as young as 6 years old when the rapes began, and certainly were somewhere between 9 and 12 years old. That puts Richard Buell in the territory of pedophilia as far as I'm concerned, and that's why I use the term pedophile rapist to describe him. So he was convicted, went to jail, and I was very careful to only blog about cases where people had been charged, tried, and convicted and sentenced to jail terms, because I wanted to avoid being accused of slander or libel or whatever. And yet, I'm basking in the glory of being falsely accused of the criminal act of blasphemous libel by atheist Unitarians in the 21st century. That's what I'm doing.
You're celebrating it.
I'm celebrating it. I damn well should be celebrating it.
Good morning.
And Francis, you know what you should be doing? You should be demanding an explanation from the UUA as to why they are misusing Canada's blasphemy law in sex abuse cover-up legal bullying that seeks to hide such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers. That's what you should be doing as a Canadian Unitarian Universalist minister. You're welcome. Please do it. And get a whole bunch of other Canadian Unitarian Universalist ministers to do exactly that. Maybe start a petition demanding an explanation from the UUA as to why they falsely accused me of blasphemous libel and clergy sex abuse cover-up and denial of legal bullying. Now that was Francis Deverell, who is a Canadian Unitarian Universalist minister, who I believe is essentially, well, she's in Ottawa. I think she's associated with the Ottawa Unitarian Church. And this is sort of typical behavior of Unitarian Universalists who see my protests. They come on as being nice, like, how are you? How are you feeling? Francis Deverell is actually, she already knows what I told her. She's been aware of it for years, but I just decided to remind her of things that I've already told her, and it's recorded on video, which is great. Thanks, sir. I got a nice smile from the guy. So I'm very happy to have a video recording of Canadian Unitarian minister Francis Deverell, essentially, asking me how I am, and I tell her I'm thoroughly enjoying being falsely accused of the criminal act of blasphemous libel by immoral and and unethical and, quite frankly, batshit crazy atheist Unitarians like Reverend Dr. Peter Morales, president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, or perhaps I should say former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, because he resigned on April Fool's Day, just less than a month ago. Reverend Dr. Peter Morales resigned as the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, but not for his immoral and unethical and borderline criminal and, yes, batshit crazy attempted misuse of Canada's blasphemy law in an effort to hide such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, but because he got a little bit snippy with, some of the anti-racism advocates in the Unitarian Universalist Association. He resigned in a controversy over hiring practices of the Unitarian Universalist Association. It was actually kind of ironic because essentially Reverend Dr. Peter Morales, who wrapped himself in his Latino Hispanic ancestry and heritage in order to help get elected as the token Latino president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is a predominantly white religious community. He basically, he basically, as I said, promoted himself as being, a Latino. This was part of his strategy, I believe, to be elected as the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, because I'm pretty sure that if just another white guy had been running against Reverend Laurel Hallman, that Unitarian Universalists would have instead voted for the first female president of the UUA instead of the first token Latino president of the UUA. And the reason I say female president and not token female president is because, women are actually quite well represented amongst Unitarian Universalist clergy. They make up a significant percentage of Unitarian Universalist ministers. I think it's at least 40% of Unitarian Universalist ministers currently are women. So to elect a woman as UUA president would not in any way be tokenistic. It would be representative of the participation of women in Unitarian Universalist ministry. But as far as hello. So, let's see what happens here. Yes, they're going in. This guy had a bit of a smirk on his face. One of these sort of smirks that essentially try to pretend, that this protest is not valid kind of thing, like I'm really not protesting against anything that actually exists kind of thing. But anyway, getting back to Reverend Dr. Peter Morales, he stepped down on April 1st, April Fool's Day, quite appropriately, I think, as a result of this controversy. Essentially what happened is a UUA board trustee, Christina Rivera, applied to... Good day, sir. So, we got Mark Abley standing in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. Mark Abley is a Gazette journalist, assuming he's still employed by the Gazette. He's words columnist for the Montreal Gazette. Just one of the members of the Unitarian Church of Montreal who's... You
like the daffodils?
What?
You like the daffodils?
They're quite pretty, yes. Yep. So here's Mark Abley asking me if I like the daffodils. And, this is, again, typical foolish behavior, really, on the part of Unitarians, like the be nice kind of behavior that's essentially willful ignorance and psychological denial, basically asked me what I think of the daffodils, but he certainly doesn't want to ask me what I think of Unitarian Universalists misusing blasphemy law to cover up and hide pedophilia and rape committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers. No, I don't think he really wants to talk about that. So, and since we're on the subject, the Montreal Gazette has repeatedly failed, and that's in capital uppercase F-I-L, lowercase e-d, failed, and indeed just outright refused to responsibly report on the fact that the Unitarian Universalist Association has attempted to misuse Canada's blasphemy law and clergy sex abuse cover-up legal bullying And I think it might have something to do with the fact that Mark Abley's not the only Gazette journalist, Gazette employee, who's a member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. There are, in fact, a few others, including the Gazette's former justice reporter, Sue Montgomery. She is, or at least was for quite some time, a member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. I specifically asked her to report on the fact that the Unitarian Universalist Association had falsely accused me of blasphemous libel in oh, so Mark Abley's whispering here. If you want more information, just Google Unitarian Church of Montreal. They're going to give you a pile of bullshit. They're going to give you a pile of bullshit that's basically lies. If you want the truth, I'd hop on the internet and Google Unitarian Church of Montreal and Unitarian misuse of blasphemy law. You won't find it in the Gazette because the Gazette refuses to publish the story. It might have something to do with Gazette employees wielding influence on the Gazette to not publish stories about the things that are happening in the Unitarian Universalist religious community. Might be, eh? No? You sure about that? You sure maybe Sue Montgomery didn't wield some influence within the Gazette? You don't know? You wouldn't know, exactly. You wouldn't know, but you're saying you didn't. What? Oh, you're being coy about that. You've been...
I've been a Gazette employee for the last 14 years.
Okay, you're freelancer. You're certainly still publishing in the Gazette. I've seen. So here's Mark Abley denying being a Gazette employee. He's saying I have not been a Gazette employee for the last 14 years. So okay, this is basically what's known as a technicality. Mark Abley has certainly contributed quite a number of columns to the Gazette